Welcome everybody to a position of the week. So this is a game that I played with Shakhriyar Mamedyarov in the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, part of the Grand Chess Tour. This was in the Rapid section, and while Rapid games generally will have a lot more mistakes than Classical, they're still slow enough that you can take some time and calculate lines. So here I was playing the black pieces, and I got a very promising position from the opening and early middle game. I followed my own semi-Slav course to get what seemed like a really strong position. The first thing we should notice here is that black has this 4-on-3 pawn majority, which sort of implies that he should be playing towards the king side or in the center, and furthermore, the bishops are exerting a lot of pressure. So it really feels like the king side is looking like where we want to play, and it's quite nice that if we compare that to white's 3-on-2 majority instead, it's really ineffective. We're not particularly scared of him going and making a pass pawn or anything like that. So the question is, how are we going to make the most of this position? And so the first thing that I thought of was, why don't we set our center in motion with the move e4? Gain more space, get ready for e3 and f3, and you basically play a pawn storm and try to break down the pawn cover around white's king. Well, the problem with this was that I was a bit worried about the move knight d5, which sort of mobilizes white's pieces a lot. In particular, this white squared bishop is a very bad piece, and not only is it a bad piece, it doesn't have a great place to go to get out of the way of the rook. But once knight d5 comes, this wasn't so clear to me, because now it's hard to take this pawn on d5. If rook takes d5, there will be bishop c4, and if bishop takes d5, I was very worried about rook takes d5, and then bishop to c4. So here it turns out black is okay. There's a very nice resource, rook f d8, and I was worried about queen f5, but I had missed this very lovely move, bishop takes f2, and now queen c5 check, where this king has nowhere to go, where queen takes c4 is not check. What you would love to do is play a move like king to h1, let's say king f1. Essentially, the problem is this is check. If white had time to play queen e6 check to get the queen off of the hanging square, and then take back on c4, we would lose, but there's nowhere for white's king to go where queen c4 is in check. Even this, though, if white doesn't play queen f5, this doesn't strike me as that convincing. I have moved these pawns sort of in front of my king, and my king has no great cover, which was not an issue when the position was sort of closed and white's pieces were locked in, but this didn't feel great. I didn't think I wanted to go grab a pawn and hang on to it. That did not feel like the way I'm supposed to break through in this position. So I was thinking that didn't look great. The next thing I thought was, well, is it possible to play this line and then just not take on d5? But then the problem is I'm attacking without this bishop. And a second ago we were seeing one of the reasons that this kingside attack feels like the right way to play is that this bishop is very powerful. So playing without that bishop didn't entice me much either. The next thing I thought was, why don't I play bishop d4? Which is prophylaxis against knight d5. And this is probably the second best move, and it's not terrible. But it's not that great either. Well, I can consider maybe bishop f3, for example. It's a slow move, and if I believed there was nothing direct, I would have done this. But I sort of felt like I should be breaking through. So what I realized then was e4 is the right idea to try to open up white's king and attack it. But it's the right idea, but the wrong execution because it's too slow. Knight d5 is an annoying threat, and I was wondering if I could do something more direct. Furthermore, I was getting to think about, what about this queen? She's a little bit low on squares, so the next thing I considered was bishop c8, attacking the queen. Where can the queen go? There's only one square, which is h4. So in the event of queen f3, I can play e4, and the queen's just about trapped. Her only move is to take on f4, and now I move this knight anywhere, let's say g4, f2 drops, and this game is over. So she has to go to h4. And then I realized here, do I have any discoveries with this knight? Not quite. I was looking for some kind of knight g4 to work, but after taking on e7, we cannot take on f2 because then we will not be able to get the queen back. And so I thought, what if I take f2 first? Well, here, king takes f2 would certainly lose to knight e4 check in the discovery, but unfortunately white can take with the queen. And then I remembered something that one of my old mentors taught me a long time ago, which is that whenever you are looking in a position and looking for tactical resources, and you're finding that they're not working for you, one thing that you can do to create additional possibilities is to switch the move orders. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, if I'm thinking about bishop c8 and bishop takes f2, what if I start with the move bishop takes f2? Because the whole point here after knight c3, bishop c8, after queen h4, bishop takes f2, the whole point was white has to take with the queen. He can't take with the king. But if we switch the move order, we realize that here he has no choice. He must take with the king. And now bishop c8 comes. And so already here, this was starting to feel promising. Still, I wanted to calculate accurately and make sure that I wasn't blundering anything, because I did just sacrifice a piece. So we want to make sure this works before we actually pull the trigger. So white's queen is hanging, and we're only down one piece for a pawn. So clearly, if we can take that queen, we'll just win with material. And the question is, how can white get out of it? We already know queen h4 will fail. We have a check on e4, and the queen is lost. So white, to save this queen, can either play g4 or queen f3, and he can play either of these moves with or without rook takes d8. So without rook takes d8, they both just fall on their face. If g4, I can play f takes g3 check, and then he must take with the queen to save the queen, and now I have a double check with the discovery, so here the queen is lost. That's easy enough. Furthermore, if queen f3, the same e4 just traps the queen. There's nowhere for her to go. This I saw very easily. Queen takes f4, knight g4 comes, and this is gone. I considered knight g4 as well. We'll get sort of to that later, but I was a little worried about taking it. Takes and takes when it's not that easy to break through. So pretty quickly I realized that white's best defensive try was rook takes d8. Now it turns out you can just take the queen here. It's not the best way, but it does work. I thought this position was unclear. I was worried that white's two bishops and rook would be powerful and could, if he ever manages to blockade my e-pawn, for example, if he can play something like bishop f3 and knight e4 or knight d5, I can probably resign. So it felt like risky and I could lose control. Now the computer does claim black wins. It finds, I think, queen e3 is best, and apparently white can't coordinate and black is winning. If I had more time, or if the way I played wasn't going to work, maybe I would have been able to look in that direction. But the first thought should be, what if I simply retake the rook? How does trading the rooks help white? So if we take with the queen, we realize that this clears the d3 square for white's queen. She's no longer trapped in here. White's good to go. But taking with the rook is very natural. And now both g4 and queen f3 become a little bit more serious because this rook on the f file is absent. In the game, Mamedyarov played g4, which I think I can deal with very easily, but the move queen f3 concerned me more, because now what I was banking on before, when we still had rooks on d1 and f8, was I could play e4 and trap the queen. Now she's no longer trapped because of queen takes f4, and I'm missing this rook on f8. So I have to look in other directions. But knight g4 calls attention to itself, and I was immediately drawn to this because, again, and previously with e4, we see the absence of these rooks makes queen takes f4 possible and is heavily in white's favor. However, after knight g4, the absence of these rooks here, we saw this position a second ago where there were still rooks, and I didn't see a great way to break straight through. Here there is queen h4 check, when the move king f3 becomes impossible because the e1 rook is hanging, thanks to the absence of those rooks. So I realized already knight g4 is a possibility. He must play king g1, queen c5 check, king h1, and knight f2 check. And I burned a lot of time here trying to find a win, and I just couldn't find it. And a lot of time isn't that much. It's maybe 3 minutes. But in a rapid game, that's something. I looked at all the discoveries. I looked at knight d3, and then knight takes b2. I don't think this works because of rook b1 when the knight is in trouble. If knight takes e1, white can take back, and this doesn't seem great. After queen g1, bishop f1. We're taking some pawns, but white seems safe enough, and his pieces are going to get good. That wasn't amazing. I considered knight h3. There's no smothered mate, of course, because of the queen is still on the f3 square, so that doesn't work. I thought about here, why don't I try to kick the queen off of f3 with the move bishop g4 when the queen is trapped, and it seems like if she moves away, there's going to be a smothered mate. But there's knight e4, and that should win for white. So I was really starting to struggle with this, but then I remembered one thing that Jakob always told me, which is always slow down and be very wary of automatic moves. When you're moving immediately, you're probably missing something. And here, without a second's thought, my first thought was to just go queen c5. I mean, what could be more natural? We check this king, we get ready for discoveries. But if you just slow down for half a second, it's not that hard to see that queen h4 immediately ends the game, because this rook is hanging, and then queen takes h2 mate is there as well. So once I realized that, it was pretty much smooth sailing. Mamedyarov played g4, which I had seen, but this is very easy to deal with. We go rook d2, attacking this bishop, and now also pointing out that once this bishop is pinned, the g4 pawn will fall, and with it, white's queen will as well. So for example, if white were to try to save his bishop with bishop c1, there's any number of winning moves, but the easiest, I think, is knight takes g4 check, where this king is in check, and he cannot avoid moving to a square where a check will happen, and this bishop gives a check. So here we have check, and the queen is lost. If here, we can go e4 check to clear the e5 square. If king f4, queen e5 is mate, and if king takes e4, if knight takes e4, we have knight e5 winning the queen. There's probably something even better than that somehow, but this is clearly good enough. So, and if king g1, we go queen c5. And once more, this king has nowhere to go where I won't have a knight check to win the queen. That's easy enough. So we realize that knight takes g4 wins the queen, which means white has to sort of respect that threat. And then, if nothing else, I can just take the bishop back with an extra pawn and completely crushing position. Mamedyarov tried rook d1. I mean, there was just no move to be made. And I played bishop takes g4 to take the bishop on b2 next. Black is 2 pawns up, 2 very healthy pawns. White's position is completely collapsing. There's just nothing to be done here. And Mamedyarov just resigned, which was a totally understandable decision. So I think there were a lot of key tenets of calculation that we saw present here. Looking for candidate moves, examining all checks and captures, using the right thought process, and then that one of reverse the move order to create more possibilities, and then always be wary of automatic moves and slow down. I was very happy with finding this tactical idea, and very happy to have won a nice game. Thanks much for watching. I'll see you next time for another position of the week.